There's a bag sitting in a warehouse right now. It cost $41 to make. The brand will sell it to you for $1,800. And the women who already know that number, they stopped buying it years ago quietly, without making a scene, and moved on to something better. That's what this video is about. Not outrage, not a call-out, just the information that a small group of women already have, and that most women never get told. Because the luxury handbag industry runs on one assumption, that you won't look too closely. That you'll see the logo, feel the weight of the marketing, and hand over your card without ever asking what's actually inside the bag. Some women have started asking. They've traced the leather back to the tannery, checked the hardware composition, looked up what the bag resells for 2 years later, and then they made different choices. Quieter choices. Brands with no celebrity ambassador budget because they spent that money on the leather instead. Bags that don't depreciate the moment you leave the store. This video gives you exactly what those women found. 3 handbag brands that are genuinely worth the investment, and 5 that stopped being worth it a long time ago, even if nobody said so out loud. We'll start with the 3 worth buying, because that's the part that actually matters. The first brand most women in this category discover is Polène, and the reaction is almost always the same: disbelief that they hadn't heard of it sooner. Polène is a Paris-based brand, founded in 2016, but the bags aren't made in Paris, they're made in Ubrique, a small town in southern Spain that happens to be where several Hermès and Loewe suppliers also operate. That's not a coincidence. Ubrique has been a center of fine leather craftsmanship for centuries, and brands that want genuine construction quality, not just a label that sounds European, source from there. Polène sources from there. The leather on their most popular styles, like the Numero 1 and the Cyme, is full grain, meaning it comes from the top layer of the hide, the strongest and most naturally textured part, the part that develops a patina over time instead of peeling or cracking. This is the same grade used by houses that charge 4 and 5 times the price. A Polène bag retails between $300 and $500. The estimated production cost for a comparable bag at that construction level runs between $60 and $90. That's a markup of roughly 4 to 5 times, which sounds high until you compare it to brands charging 20 to 30 times production cost for leather that doesn't meet the same standard. On Vestiaire Collective, Polène bags resell at 60 to 75% of retail. For a brand at this price point, that retention is exceptional. Most accessible luxury bags, the ones with the loud logos and the department store presence, resell at 20 to 40%. Polène holds its value because the women buying it are buying it for the bag, not the moment. And that kind of buyer base stabilizes resale. The second brand takes a different approach, less Parisian minimalism, more architectural precision, and it has one of the most recognizable closure systems in mid-luxury, without most women ever having seen it in a store. Strathberry is a Scottish brand, designed in Edinburgh, and its signature is a slim bar clasp closure in polished metal that runs across the top of the bag. It's the kind of hardware detail that reads immediately as intentional, not decorative, not trend-driven, structural. The hardware on Strathberry's core line is brass-based, not the zinc alloy you'll find on bags at 2 and 3 times the price from brands spending their margin on wholesale fees and influencer contracts instead of components. The leather is sourced from Spanish and Italian tanneries, full grain on their structured styles, with visible natural grain texture that you can feel the difference in immediately against a corrected grain alternative. Corrected grain leather, which is sanded down and coated to hide imperfections, is cheaper to produce and looks uniform in a way that natural leather never quite does. It also doesn't age the same way. Strathberry uses the real thing. Retail prices sit between $400 and $650 depending on the style. Resale on Vestiaire has been climbing. Their East, West tote, and Midi tote styles in neutral colorways are holding between 65 and 80% of retail on the secondary market, which puts them in the same retention tier as brands charging significantly more. The Meghan Markle Association from 2017 gave the brand a visibility moment, but what's kept the resale values rising since then is the product, not the press. The third brand is the one that even women deep in this research tend to find last, and when they do, the response is usually some version of, "Why does no one talk about this?" Cuir de Russie is a small French leather goods house with a level of material transparency that is almost unusual in this industry. The name references a historic leather treatment, a tanning method associated with Russian leather production that historically produced some of the most durable and distinctively scented hides in Europe. The brand carries that reference as a philosophy. Sourcing and construction are the product, not the logo. Their bags are produced in small runs, with leather sourced from tanneries in the leather route, the network of traditional French and Italian suppliers that the major houses draw from but rarely discuss publicly. Hardware is solid brass. Stitching is hand-finished on their structured styles. Retail prices range from approximately $450 to $900 depending on size and construction complexity, and because the brand operates with minimal marketing overhead, that price reflects material and labor cost at a ratio that most brands in this category can't match. Resale data is limited simply because the secondary market volume is low, not because the bags don't hold value, but because owners tend not to sell them. That itself is a signal worth paying attention to. If Polène is the introduction to this tier of buying, and Strathberry is the step into architectural mid-luxury, Cuir de Russie is where women land when they've fully stopped buying the logo and started buying the object. And once you know what to look for in a bag at this level, the leather grade, the hardware composition, the construction, finishing the contrast with what most of the accessible luxury market is actually selling becomes very difficult to ignore. Now for the 5 brands that smart women have quietly moved away from, and not because they're cheap, but because the price stopped making sense once you know what you're actually paying for. This isn't a takedown. These are brands that built real businesses and genuine cultural moments. But culture and craftsmanship are 2 different things, and at some point the gap between what these bags cost and what they're made of became too wide to ignore. Coach is the easiest place to start because it's the most instructive. Coach was founded in 1941 as a genuine leather goods workshop in Manhattan, and for decades the quality matched the reputation. The leatherware collection from that era, thick, natural grain cowhide, copper hardware, minimal branding, was legitimately well made. Women kept those bags for 30 years because the bags earned it. That brand no longer exists in its original form. The modern Coach entry and mid-range lines, the ones you'll find in outlet stores and department stores, which represent the majority of their volume, use corrected grain leather on most styles. The surface is sanded and coated to achieve uniformity, which means you're not seeing or feeling the natural hide, you're feeling a coating. The hardware on these lines is predominantly zinc alloy. Production cost estimates for a Coach bag retailing at $300 to $400 run between $25 and $45. On the resale market, most Coach bags outside the vintage leatherware collection and the Tabby line sell at 15 to 30% of retail. The logo carries the price. The material doesn't justify it. Michael Kors operates on a similar model, and the numbers are starker. A Michael Kors bag retailing at $350, a standard price point for their core handbag line, has an estimated production cost of $25 to $38. The leather on most styles is either corrected grain or bonded leather, which is the lowest grade used in any product marketed as leather. Bonded leather is made from leftover scraps and fibers compressed together and coated with a polyurethane surface. It looks like leather in a photograph. It does not behave like leather over time. It peels, cracks, and separates, typically within 2 to 3 years of regular use. Michael Kors has been transparent about one thing, even if not intentionally. The brand's revenue model is built on wholesale volume and outlet pricing, not on the product. When a brand's primary distribution channel is an outlet mall, the margin structure tells you something about where the money went. Resale values reflect this. Michael Kors bags typically recover 10 to 25% of retail on the secondary market, among the lowest retention rates in the accessible luxury category. Kate Spade built its identity on wit and color and a specific kind of New York optimism that genuinely resonated. The brand's early canvas and structured nylon bags were honest about what they were: fun, accessible, not pretending to be something else. The problem is the current pricing, which has drifted into territory that implies a material and construction quality the bags don't consistently deliver. Kate Spade's mid-range leather styles use predominantly coated canvas and corrected grain leather, with PVC lining on most interior constructions. Hardware is zinc alloy. A bag retailing at $300 to $450 in this line carries production cost estimates of $28 to $50. The brand was acquired by Tapestry, the same parent company as Coach, in 2017, and the supply chain consolidation that followed did not move the material quality upward. Resale values sit between 15% and 30% of retail for most styles, with the exception of limited collaboration pieces. Longchamp occupies an interesting position because it's genuinely well made in one specific category and significantly less so in another, and most buyers don't know which one they're purchasing. The Le Plige Longchamp's iconic foldable tote is honest. It's nylon, it's priced like nylon, and it does exactly what a nylon bag should do for 20 years. That bag is worth what it costs. The problem is the leather extension of the Longchamp line, where bags retail at $400 to $700 and use leather that doesn't justify the step up in price. The Roseau and Boxtrot leather lines use full grain on some styles but corrected grain on others within the same collection, and the hardware quality does not consistently match the price point. If you buy a Le Pliage, you're buying exactly what you're sold. If you buy into the leather line expecting the same value equation, the numbers don't hold the same way. Tory Burch closes this list because it illustrates something specific about how accessible luxury branding works. The Double T logo became a genuine cultural shorthand in the late 2000s and early 2010s. It read as aspirational without being intimidating, which is a difficult positioning to achieve. But logo recognition and material investment are not the same budget line. Tory Burch's core handbag line uses coated canvas, corrected grain leather, and PVC on interior constructions across most price points. A bag retailing at $400 to $500 has estimated production costs between $30 and $55. The brand spends heavily on wholesale placement, celebrity alignment, and retail environment, all of which are legitimate business decisions, but none of which end up in the leather. Resale values for most Tory Burch styles sit between 15% and 25% of retail. The logo still carries recognition. The bag itself doesn't carry the price. Here's what separates the women who buy Polène, Strathberry, and Cuir de Russie from everyone else. It's not budget, and it's not access. It's information. The brands in that first group aren't harder to find, they're just harder to stumble across, because they don't have a $200 million marketing budget making sure you see them first. The brands in the second group built empires on the assumption that most buyers would never check the leather grade, never look up the resale value 2 years later, never ask what the hardware is actually made of. And for a long time, that assumption was correct. It's becoming less correct. The women doing this research, tracing the supply chain, checking vestiaire before they buy, understanding the difference between full grain and corrected grain before they hand over $400 are a growing group. This video means you're now part of it. The next time you're standing in front of a bag, you already know the questions. What's the leather grade? What's the hardware composition? What does this sell for secondhand? And most importantly, what am I actually paying for? And what am I paying for the logo? Those questions change the decision, every time. Which of these 3 brands had you heard of before this video? Polene, Strathberry, or Cuir de Russie? Drop it in the comments below. I'll reply to everyone.